Hey everyone, I'm Lisa Hughes at WBZ-TV in Boston, and you're listening to In the Green Room with Aidan Keene.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of In the Green Room with Aidan Keene. Today, my guest is someone who is beloved here in Massachusetts and has been a trusted voice in my home for as long as I can remember. And if you're from the Boston area, you probably know her from WBZ-TV. I'm joined by Miss Lisa Hughes. Lisa, thank you so much for being here today.
Aidan, thanks for having me. This is so nice.
I've been really looking forward to this. Having watched WBZ all my life, I feel like I already know you, but I really don't know the story behind, your legendary career, so I'm really looking forward to learning more about it.
Well, it was so nice to hear from you. And I always appreciate meeting people who watch WBZ because when we're in the studio, there's a floor director and our colleagues. And so it's nice to actually talk voice to voice and face to face with people who do watch because we never take it for granted.
Well, it certainly means a lot to have you here, and I'm wanting to know more about how you got into journalism because you're a unique guest here on my show. You're the first. I don't know if you play any instruments. I'll learn later maybe, but you're my first non-musician on the show, so this is great.
Well,
Changing things
I
up a
noticed
little.
that. You have interviewed so many great musicians and people with connections to the music industry, which is something I love and something I'm really interested in. So I've enjoyed that. My parents were both English teachers. So growing up, there was a lot of reading, a lot of writing, and a lot of news watching in my family. And I just noticed like every night at 6 o'clock, my parents watched the CBS Evening News. And I think somewhere along the line, in addition to just really enjoying the process of writing and always having a book open, it must have imprinted on me that like that is a good profession because people seem to care. And then I was in middle school and we did a like a school-wide newscast. And I'm like, this is the most fun thing. I can't believe people get to do this for a living. Like they interview people, then they put stories together, and that sort of planted the seed. And I never wanted to do anything else. So I don't think I realized how unusual that was until later when I had friends say, like, wow, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a long time. But this was just something that always interested me. And I think TV in particular, because I also loved movies. And so the idea of editing stories and having that visual component of storytelling, that always really interested me and excited me.
Wow, okay, so we had a newscast in my middle school too, and I was involved in it, and I actually used to write the history segment. We had a This Day in History thing, but I had to report a couple times, and I realized how bad I was at it actually at that point. But
I find that very hard to believe. You host a podcast and you're so comfortable talking to people and asking questions. But that could be one of those things where when we're younger, we tell ourselves like, oh, if it feels a little bit out of our comfort zone, or we say, oh, we're not good at that, and because I think
right.
you would be very good at it.
I think the thing was having so many people on the camera crew standing around me and watching intently. I think that might have been it. But
Well, yeah, mistakes are amplified, I think, and I've made plenty of them.
but you've been there for so many major moments in history. I mean, meeting with President Obama and being at the Vatican when Pope Francis was elected. I'm wondering what really stood out to you, a story that may have really impacted you personally.
Those were a couple of them. In the case of President Obama, it was almost exactly a year after the marathon bombing. And I had been at the finish line in 2013 when the bombs went off. And it was such a hard year to be reporting and such a sad and painful year. And yet at the same time, there was so much to be proud of in this community. People rose up in such remarkable ways that I felt very connected, even more connected, I would say, than ever to the community. And so we sent a letter to the White House shortly after that interfaith ceremony that the president came and participated in 2013. And we just said, Mr. President, if there's a message you want to share with Boston, we would love to give you an opportunity to do that on WBZ. And I'm going to say 4 days before the marathon, we got a yes. And so we quickly flew to Washington and talked with him. And he was eager to talk about the city's resilience and what he knew about Boston and the way the city had responded. So that was definitely one. And then that year was the first year that an American man had won in more than 30 years. And it was like a beautiful day. And it was sort of like this giant cloud just lifted. That felt so good. So interviewing the president was wonderful. And then also being able to call the race on such a meaningful day was great. Going to the Vatican was extraordinary because it is, for all of the technology in our world and the way that news travels, and when they are picking a pope, you are just looking for smoke. You are watching a live feed of that chimney, and when the smoke comes out, everybody runs. And I was on a live radio update, and while I was on the update, I saw the smoke, and I'm talking, and I said, "You can run with me, so to speak, on the phone, but I have to go." And so we were working out of I want to say it was like a monastery. And we had to weave through the building and get downstairs and then wait like everybody else in that giant courtyard in Vatican City. So that was memorable because it was just so different from any other experience that I've had like that. Trying to think of some other, I think, all of the sports championships have been memorable in different ways, and the parades, because you just see how much it connects people
Right.
and how, you're on pins and needles through the season, your team gets there, and then hundreds of thousands of people turn out to see them for the parade. And those moments just felt so good. There's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of negative news, but I think sort of the things that come to mind initially are like the really positive things where people were in celebration together and sharing the moment.
Right. That's amazing. And you mentioned how difficult the marathon, that was 2013, I believe, right? The marathon bombing.
Yes.
And at the time of our recording today, it's Patriots Day and Marathon Monday here in Boston, which is a very important day here. But, in a moment like that, I've always wondered about reporters. When you're reporting on something so tragic and so deeply emotional, how do you balance your emotions while still maintaining that level of, professionalism that your viewers rely on?
I think that's where years of having experiences come into play. It's almost like a muscle memory.
Mm.
Um, and I remember so clearly in that moment, in those minutes after the initial explosion, thinking, okay, and almost like one of those, like, what I'm telling you now will take 30 seconds, but I think it all happened in like 5 seconds. Um, how do I describe what I am seeing without making people feel the terror that I feel right now? You know, what you don't want to do is stoke a fire, right? And get people whipped up, but it was already so bad. And I'm like, I don't know how to describe what I am seeing. I don't know how to do that. And I think when it came time, the first thing we were able to do, because it was very hard to get a signal out, a satellite signal, was a phone interview. And I just needed to say, in as straightforward but without any embellishment, what I was seeing. Um, and I didn't listen to that or see that report for a year. And when I finally watched it and I heard the sound of my voice, I was startled by it. I was like, wow, that is the sound of someone who is like somewhere between like terrified and breaking down in tears and just hanging in there. There was no wavering, but it was really serious. Like you could hear, it's almost like you could hear the focus. But I think what you rely on is just, it's twofold. This is a long answer to your question, and for that I apologize. But on the one hand, it's knowing that over time you've had to report on other things that were really difficult, and remembering that you must stick with what you know to be true, and that this is going to be important for people who need information. And so, yes, it's emotional, and you're right there with everybody who's watching, but it's important to just be as helpful in that moment as possible. Like, do not come to the finish line. The bags will be, at the BAA headquarters eventually. Don't worry about that. Don't try to get your loved one. All of those things were important. So I think more than anything, you just rely on the experience of doing it and knowing that, like, here's what you do. And you just kind of ease into that, and you get into a zone, and you stay there until you're off the air. And then you can collapse or cry or whatever. But it was really important. I remember just feeling like, just stay as zen as possible and be watching and listening and be able to report only what you have experienced firsthand or an official is telling you.
Well, at that time, I was 8 years old, and I remember it very vividly, but thanks to you doing that, it made a little boy feel like everything was going to be okay, even through such a horrific moment. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm so grateful that you shared that. That means a lot to me. So thank you.
And you've got to work with some amazing people too. I mean, having grown up with WBZ, I've seen different people come in and out, but I mean, you've had some great names: Jack Williams, Bob LaBelle, Bill Shields. Who were some of your mentors and influences?
Those three are three of them. Joyce Kulhawick, also Liz Walker. And what's wonderful is that, with the exception of Bill, whom sadly we lost a few years ago, I am still in touch with all these people. So it's so much fun. Like I'll get a message from Jack, out of the blue, or about something that's happening in Boston, or if he's golfing and having a good day, sometimes I hear from him. And Lape posted something the other night, and he and I were texting about it. And I see Joyce, a couple times a year. I feel really lucky because when I moved to Boston, Aidan, I knew I liked the city. I knew I loved it here, but I didn't have a lot of experience here.
Mm.
And coming in new can be challenging. And it's almost like one of those, it's a blessing not to know how challenging it could be. I
Mm.
sort of joke around that I came in like a golden retriever, like, I am just really happy to be here. And they were all so helpful to me. I mean, they really took me under their wing. The funny thing is that Jack is originally from Idaho. And the first time we sat on the desk together, he said, "So where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm originally from the middle of nowhere. Like, you won't know." And he's like, "Well, try me, because I'm also from the middle of nowhere." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I am from Moscow, Idaho." And he says, "I'm from Pocatello." And I looked at him, I'm like, how did two people from Idaho wind up on a news desk together? And then we sort of went through our personal history. And although we were years apart, we were in a bunch of the same places. So it was fun, and it kind of connected us right off the bat. But they were just, all of them, so great. And now David and I have worked together for more than a decade on the desk, and we work with Eric, who's so good, and Steve, who's like a legend. So I can safely say, like, one of the best things about working here, in addition to loving the city and the community and the people here, is that the people I get to work with are just, they're second to none. I feel very, very lucky.
And that's really obvious when you watch it too. It's just a big family, and you can tell how much fun you guys
And
have.
we give each other a lot of grief, but
Mhm.
it's all in good fun.
That's awesome. And is there any advice that you've received from any of your mentors that have stuck with you from the beginning that you
So it was
followed?
Bob Lobel who said, "Know what you don't know." And I think if I look back to the early years of my career, um, I was so terrified to be caught not knowing about something. But when you're 23 years old, you are not going to have a vast knowledge of levies and property taxes and um, climate issues. You just don't have the life experience to know all those things.
Right.
And so I think I spent a fair amount of my time when I was a young reporter not asking all of the questions I could have asked because I was afraid I would look dumb. And then later being like, oh, now I have to do this double legwork to figure out this part that I didn't know when I could have just asked this person. And so when I got here, Lobe said, Hughesy, know what you don't know. And I sort of embraced it. I'm like, you know what? Rather than feeling like that is going to rein me in, I'm going to let that connect me to people. You think about it when somebody asks you something, how it just, it does create this connection because you're sharing something with them. And so I had a lot of people sharing with me about New England, about Boston, about the history of busing, for example, things that I didn't experience, but that I knew were really important. And I would say that piece of advice, even now, it's like I'm much more apt to ask the question than to be afraid to look dumb because, I can look dumb on my own, but as a journalist and as a reporter, if I have a question, I'm going to ask.
Right. And having met so many legends and you know, musicians on and off this podcast myself and getting advice, it's really cool to have something that can stick in your head, every day and that you can think of and live your life based on.
Yeah, it's
That's
good. It's
really
like
cool.
it's a little bit of a compass.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool. So now that we've learned a bit more about your career, I would love to learn more about Lisa Hughes outside of the newsroom. What do you enjoy doing or listening to in terms of music, stuff like that?
Okay, so I love music. I played the piano as a kid, but starting 9 years ago, I started taking guitar lessons.
Nice.
So I have an acoustic guitar and then I have a Fender Mustang, which I don't play as much because there was a grounding issue in my house and it sounded terrible.
Mm,
I think I fixed it. So starting in May, I'm going to resume playing the electric guitar. I
great.
mean, I'm the least technical person. So when it sounded buzzy, I was like, ah, and I took it to a repair person and he said, there is nothing wrong with this guitar. Just play it somewhere else in your house. So that is what I'm going to do. And I love riding a road bike. So I ride the Pan Mass Challenge. This will be my 16th year
Wow.
to raise money for Dana-Farber. And I ride with a group of 8 other women and then 6,000 other riders in August when everybody rides. But there's a team of us and we've become really good friends. And so that's lovely. Um, and I love to do stuff with my family. My son is 14 and plays volleyball. And I have a very high maintenance dog, which I feel like he's 6, and that has his training is going to be a lifetime of experiences. And then my daughter is out of school, but I think spending as much time with them as I can. I love being outside, so this winter was very, very challenging.
Yeah.
And I still love to read and go to movies. Yeah, and if there's any time left, experiment with cooking.
Okay.
That
Very
usually
cool.
falls at the bottom.
Well, Lisa, I'll tell you, my band is looking for a guitarist. So
Really?
after May, you never know.
Be super fun. I have friends who play and
Mhm,
they're like, you really need to play in public, which I have never done. And during the pandemic, my guitar teacher would have these Zoom recitals and you didn't have to do it.
mhm.
And I was so terrified to play the guitar on Zoom in front of 30 people. Like I would be, almost shaking. And it was ridiculous, right? Like I present on TV every day and report on things and yet playing the guitar in front of like 8-year-olds and their families was the scariest thing. So I did 2 recitals. I played a Casey Musgrave song for one and an Eddie Vedder song that I played much slower than he did for the other. And then I was like, you know what? I am not doing this anymore. I can have stress in other areas of my life, but I just need to play music for fun. But hopefully someday I will be able to play in public and enjoy it. So it would be an honor to play with your band at some point.
Music is a whole different animal. I was terrified of performing in front of people for a long time, and now, I have my own Elvis tribute show here, and we played for a crowd of 800 people last summer, and I was fine with that.
That's
But
awesome.
I will
Oh, that's
say,
fantastic.
in terms of guitar, it's hard. My hero is Ace Frehley from Kiss, and I can't touch those songs. I call myself a Chuck Berry guitarist. All of my solos sound exactly the same, just like Run Run Rudolph in different keys.
You know what? That you're playing in public, that you are, that you can play solos. Like, I think you should feel great about that. I also was a huge Kiss fan.
Mhm.
Um, and for whatever reason, my mom was not a fan. And so she was like, I don't, you can't have those records. I was like, what? I can't buy the Kiss records with my babysitting money. And so I would tape them from my friends and then label them things like Blondie, sometimes Van Halen if I wanted to be really edgy. And so most of the time I got away with it.
Right. I hear that a lot in the story of parents not really grasping onto Kiss. I guess I
Right?
get it. Not really, but I'll say I get it. But it's music, you know, has the power to move people, and so does what you do, which is amazing. So,
Well,
I,
very kind of you. Thank you.
my final question for you is kind of a broad question that I like to ask everybody because sometimes I get really great answers. Looking back over your entire career, what are you most proud of?
A couple of things.
Mhm.
The connections that I've made with people, both in the stations that I worked in and also in the communities I worked in. Um, I just think people in their quest to do fill in the blanks, anything, are so remarkable. particularly people who've suffered a setback and are trying to sort of reclaim a part of themselves. I am endlessly in awe of what people can do. I know that a lot of what we focus on in the news is what people do that is detrimental or bad or illegal. But one of the things I'm most proud of is being able to recognize a really good story with really good characters and to be able to tell those stories. And also that I have never compromised my own values to tell a story. I can say that the only time that I think I did something that I was truly uncomfortable with, I went up. I went up with a stunt pilot over a grass runway in southern Idaho many years ago. And as I was pulling up, I was like, "What am I doing? I don't know this person. I'm going to go up with a stunt pilot. Like, if my parents find out that I did this, they will be so upset." So I got to the runway and I said, I've been thinking about this. I would love to do this story and I'm going to focus on you, but I am not actually going to go up in the plane. And the guy at the airport said, your general manager thought you would say that. And so I'm to tell you that he expects you to be on the plane. And, it was whatever, 24. And I was like, okay. Now I'd be like, I'm not going on the plane. Like if I didn't want to go on the plane, but I didn't think I could even say no. So I said yes, and I found some comfort in the fact that this woman like flew with her dog in the plane. So I'm like, nothing's going to happen to this plane when her dog's in the plane too. But in terms of, so I sort of compromised what I felt I was comfortable with in that moment, but not at the detriment of the story.
Right.
So I think I've been true to myself and to my values, and I've been able to share stories, hopefully that endure for people who have done extraordinary things.
And through doing that, you have been such an inspiration to so many people, myself included. And this has been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and giving us a look behind the scenes into an amazing
Oh,
career.
thank you. And thank you for being such a loyal viewer for such a long time. It's nice to be able to make this connection with you now. And it was great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. And for everybody listening, if you're in the Boston area, you can see Lisa on weeknights. Let's see if I get this right. 21 years of watching. I think I should get this right. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 11 o'clock weekdays, right?
Right on. That's it.
Awesome. So catch Lisa on WBZ at one of those times or all of those times, and enjoy the news.
Awesome. Thanks,
Lisa,
Aidan.
thank you so much. And until next time, everybody, may God bless you, and we'll see you again soon.